Grab a cup of joe and let's gather round that hay bale. With your hosts, Ann from Andale Homestead, Cayce from Ormsby Farms, Monica from Bland's Promised Land Ranch, and Sandi from Suburban Homesteader, Wyoming, Arizona. Here they are. Hey, y'all, hey!
Did it again, y'all. I am telling you, I am the mute button. Hi, I'm Cayce. I don't know how to press the mute button, but I am Cayce from Ormsby Farm, the Halfway Homestead.
Hey, everybody. I'm Monica from Bland's Promised Land Ranch.
And this is Sandi with Suburban Homesteader, Wyoming, Arizona.
And you're probably thinking, who are these people that keep on saying their faces or saying their names? Come over and see our faces. If you're listening to us in Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any of those podcasty places, come over to YouTube to Around the Hay Bale and come check us out, because sometimes we have props like we do tonight, and sometimes we are just really fun to watch actually in person. So come on over and see us.
I agree. We are really fun to watch in person, but we do have really cool props. And I think you're going to show a few of those props tonight for sure. I will say today we're on episode 4 of our limited series. It is a 6-part prepper series. And, with all the things going on in the world, we've got so many things happening. We just thought it'd be a great time to really discuss how to get prepared and kind of where to go when you're trying to get all these things put in one space to kind of get it all in your head. We have a hay bale prepper guide that you can go on Etsy and grab for 99 cents. It's a great way to just kind of put it all together in one space, get it in a binder. Cayce's got this really great binder that he put his in. And I think it's awesome because you can put it in a binder or you can put it in your go bags, whatever you do. If you have it in one space, then you can get to it easily in times of emergencies. And when we talk about prepping and being a prepper or preparing, we're not really talking about, end of days. We're talking about really just those emergencies, maybe a loss of a job, or maybe, there was some sort of power outage, whatever it is. We are trying to help you get prepared now so that when things come your way in times that you need to have these items, then you have what you need. And so episode 4, really, we're talking about skill building. And I think it's such a crucial thing, really. And right after preparing and knowing who you're preparing for, which we talked about a few weeks ago, we've talked about water catchment and we've discussed food storage. Really, skill building should be at the top of your list, because you really can't store water unless you know what you're doing, right? I mean, you kind of do. You need to can. You need to have skills like canning to be able to prepare food and things like that, and even to do water sometimes. But you need certain skills to be able to adequately prepare, but also to follow through with the preps, right? I mean, you could put as much stuff in your pantry as possible, but if you don't have the skills to be able to cook it or use it, then it's worthless just having it sit there. So for me, my number one skill that I would say that you need to have as a homesteader would probably be knowing how to survive without all the amenities that you would normally survive with, right? I need to know how to work without running water. And that's one of the things that I've practiced here is have the skills to use the things that you have already. So how do I deal without running water? I've practiced that. We've had our kids work on that. How do you live your daily life? How do you cook? How do you clean? How do you deal with not having running water? Using your water catchment, using your other resources. That's one of the skills that we've built here on the farm and on the homestead here. So Sandi or Cayce, whoever wants to jump in first, what do you think is your number one skill? What's the number one skill you think you should have if you're preparing for these things?
Oh, okay. Cayce's pointing at me, so it's going to be me.
Sandi's first.
Well, a simple skill that I think most people in the United States today don't have is list making. And that may sound funny, but like we have the prepper guide, right? And you may think, well, you're on episode 4. I don't really need to spend 99 cents, which is hardly nothing. But you can look back and listen to all of our podcasts that we've had and put notes down. Then you can take your research, if it's at the library, if it's a class, if it's our older YouTube videos, and you can take notes and put them in the sections of that prepper guide so that you have that. And I know that's a silly kind of skill, but it can save your life, actually.
No,
And
it's important.
yeah, but besides that, my thing that I think you need to be able to do is garden. Uh, um, no matter what situation it is, if you have to leave your house, if you're staying at your house, you're going to your in-laws' house, um, can you grow your own food? Where I live in two different places, the soils are completely different. I had to learn how to garden in Arizona because it's very sandy. I thought I was watering enough. My plants weren't growing. It was like, you got to water more, girl. You have to know your situation, your soils. Um, you have to have your own seed bank. Can you take a tomato, save those seeds so that one tomato can feed you for the whole next year with those seeds? What about you, Cayce?
I have to say that, I mean, for people that know me, if I say I agree with Sandy, everybody's like, well, duh, because I usually do. But what's funny is we talked a little bit about this off recording. Before Sandy was a permanent host on the podcast, she came in as like a guest host, maybe once, sometimes twice a season. And Sandy, did you know the first episode you were on, you talked about the best time to save seeds?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And we were talking about how when you get like the cucumber, because right now it's cucumber season, okay, you're getting tons of cucumbers. That orange one that you think, oh, I'm just throwing that to the chickens or to the pigs, that actually is the best time. Just cut her open, save some of those seeds, and then throw them to the pigs and the chickens.
Mm-hmm.
Because the
Mhm.
riper the fruit is, or you want the seeds from the ripest of the fruits. And once you learn that skill of saving seeds, you have a tomato that you either got from a friend or you bought organic at the grocery store. You have tomatoes until I'm pointing to eternity.
Mhm.
I mean, you'll never want for a tomato again, and that's because you've learned the skills to save the seed, to then grow a plant from the seed. When you have the seed big enough and you're pruning it, you're pruning off the suckers to make yet again another plant
Yeah.
that will produce
Yeah.
not as much as the original one, but it will produce some. And then you're growing it and you're harvesting these tomatoes to can or dehydrate or whatever you're doing, but you're saving the seeds for next year. So that's why I always say the biggest skill for me is, as she said, gardening.
Yeah.
Learning to garden because yeah, even though you can, I didn't want to learn to can until I knew how to grow what I was going to be canning.
Mm.
You can buy from the farmers market other people's produce and can it. I'm not saying that, so I know there may be some comments on that. But I'm saying if we're talking about skills, we're talking about it's shut down. It's just you and your family on the homestead. Do you know how to keep those tomatoes going or to keep those pickles going or to keep your chicken meat going? That's another kind of thing is learning these skills. And gardening is kind of step one in our 12-step program to how to be prepared. So,
Yeah,
Monica,
but
what were you going to say, Sandy?
I was just going to say that while you're waiting for your garden to get big enough to harvest, if you have some foraging skills, you can still feed your family.
Yeah, that's true. That's a great skill too, foraging, especially knowing what's local to your area, right? It's important not to just be watching videos of, maybe, the Canadian prepper who's out there foraging in Canada if you don't live in Canada.
Right.
Don't
Right.
don't be looking at other videos and other really great YouTubers or people that you love and admire and you think, "Oh my gosh, these people are great." Look at people also in your area because you need to know how to forage the things that are in your space because
Right.
maybe what he has or what Sandy has or what Cayce has isn't going to be in my space. We were talking a little bit earlier, Cayce, about some sort of like horrible like infestation of vine that's growing in Georgia everywhere. And I'm like, I don't have that here. Maybe it's medicinal or something. And, we were looking at different ways to use it. But I think that's a skill people that don't necessarily have either. And that's something that we need to look at is really the skill of looking at everything with a purpose and not just brushing it off as, oh, it's a weed or, oh, it's a whatever, looking at something as this has a purpose. Let me figure out how I can use it in this way. Now, another skill that we've worked on my kids this past year, and Miss Ann would definitely be ready for the skill, is fire making. Do you know how to make a fire? Do you know how to start a fire? And do you know how to keep one going? My kids used to play organized sports before the whole, 2020 thing happened. And we opted to take our kids out of organized sports and put them into organized survival prepping, if you will. And we said, how about we build skills instead of just playing organized sports? Because it's fun, but we can also make skill building fun. And so we started teaching our kids how to start fires, how to build a shelter, how to survive on your own if you need to cook your food that has been in a jar, or that is if you need to reconstitute your dehydrated foods. We practice skills, practical skills, for them to be able to live without running water and without electricity, because we wanted them to feel empowered and capable. And so that's kind of what we've been doing over the past 5 years. So no more organized sports for my kids, more of let's, do some Boy Scout stuff, if you will. All right. And do you know how to start a fire? Where would you start? There's lots of really great videos out there. Miss Ann talks about it in a lot of her videos, her Be Ready videos, because what happens if, you have a hurricane and it knocks your power out? If you have a snowstorm and the power's out, how do you keep warm? How do you start a fire? And Cayce, you mentioned you want to learn how to cook over an open fire, don't you?
I do. I think, I've gotten to the point now of learning, because I will admit that when I started homesteading, I did not know how to build a fire and to keep a fire going. And it's important to say both of those, because yes, you can get a fire started, but you know how to have
Keep
the
it going.
fire in. You need that fire to keep firing if you want to get hot, if you want to
Right.
cook something. And I remember Anne talked about one thing to save that you never would have thought of for fire starter, and that's the lint out of your dryer.
Yep.
Right.
Instead of you're throwing it away when you could be saving it. I've seen some people that vacuum seal it to keep it like fresh in a vacuum seal bag. But I want to learn, now that I know how to make a fire, keep it firing. How do you cook on it?
Yeah.
Because most people are probably used to cooking on a stove,
Yep.
whether it's a gas stove, an electric. I
Mhm.
guess gas would be a little bit more closer to cooking open flame, but I think it's a different monster if you
Yeah.
have like a fire pit or a campfire and you're cooking that way. We're talking like 1860s, the show Outlander, cooking that kind of style fire.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's where you can make a list too and prepare ahead of time. Sandy brought in a good topic, is making a list, right? So, Cayce, you want to learn how to cook over an open fire. But what do you need? Well, you need a pot that's going to withstand the heat of an open fire. Also, when you learn about cooking on open fire, you not only need a proper pans, you need to make sure you have some oven mitts, you have some things to be able to touch that. How are you going to
Right.
take that off the fire? Are you going to cook next to the heat and then spin your kettle around instead of on the heat directly? Eric's favorite thing is to take his cast iron kettle and put his little Dutch oven in the side of the fire, like next to the
Mhm.
flames, not really on it, and then take all that old coals and everything and kind of pile it on top. So he's cooking from
Right.
the top and the sides, and he spins it. So you have to really hone that in, but think about all the tools you're going to need, right? Think about some of those things that you can prepare now, so that as you're learning to cook, you're learning that skill, you've got some of those tools. Because Eric, bless his heart, he's so sweet. I just love my husband so much. He thought, I'm going to get a cast iron kettle, like a big Dutch oven, and I'm just going to go out there, put some food in it, and just stick it on the fire. It don't work like that. You will burn the life out of your food. You will not really ruin it, but you will make your wife miserable and ruin a lot of your chances, because you be burning that kettle up and you have to that's a lot to clean. So you can't just go pop it on there. You've got to learn some of those skills on how to cook, so you're not burning your food to pieces and no one wants to eat it. Because
What
it's one thing if you're making beans and weenies on a skillet, on a cast iron, you need to know how to make sure you're not cooking it to char.
Well, it's a good thing you said cast iron. That is the one thing that I think all of us have cast iron, right?
Mhm.
Right?
Yep.
I recommend everybody's all getting these new wonderful Rachel Ray stainless steel pans or the Paula Deans or all of that. Go to a thrift shop and find you some cast iron.
Hmm.
If you're
Yeah.
going to hoard and shop stuff, let it be cast iron.
Or some estate sales or whatever when people are
Yeah,
just getting rid of stuff. And you don't need a million of them. Okay, guys? Keep it
maybe
simple. Yeah, you just need a few, really. I mean, um you don't need to spend a lot. You need to get good quality, but you don't need 8 cast iron pans. You really don't. I mean, I'm a big family. I have a few cast irons, but I don't have an abundance. I mean, you can only cook on so many. You only have so many eyes on your stove, and you only have so many places to cook. And when you're building a fire to cook over an open fire, you only have so many spaces to put the meals. So you don't need so many. So don't look at it as, oh my gosh, it's going to be too expensive. I can't do all of it. Just get you one right now. Get a second one later,
Hmm.
but learn how to use it.
Yeah, I think you also need the skill of frugal living. Now, we, I mean, our lives are pretty easy. They're seriously pretty easy. Um, in my purse, I carry around this story, um, and it was called "Why Poor People Survive When Any Regime Changes." Why is it that the people that don't hardly have any money, they survive? That everybody else, the middle and the high, it's up, it's down, it's crazy. It's because they're willing to pick up sticks. They're willing to do the frugal things in life that nobody else wants to do. And so, even if it's for a week or two, how can you be frugal? How can you turn that negative into a positive for your kids and your spouse, and how you can make it fun? And if they can practice that a few times, if things would happen, you would be in such a better space, because you could remind them, remember when we did this? Remember how we made this into a game? This is what we're going to do now. And frugal living can just overlap into so many different areas. Can you fix your own car? Can you um, sharpen your chainsaw? Can skills that you just need? And Monica and I were talking beforehand that homesteaders have such an advantage because they're always, the whole goal is to learn more skills.
yeah,
And so if there was massive something that in the United States, the homesteaders would be far ahead of most people.
Yeah, I agree. I think homesteaders, farmers, people who seek to live that lifestyle, more of a self-sufficient, sufficient lifestyle. You're always learning, you're always seeking to learn those skills, and you're willing to go out of your way to learn those skills. We've hosted skill shares here in Texas where people have driven hours just to get together so you can learn how to process a rabbit or can up your food, or maybe they wanted to learn first aid skills. And finding resources, go find those free workshops. Learn
Mhm.
those skills now, because you never know when you're going to need to use them. Do you know how to administer first aid? Do you know how to do CPR? Do you know how to stop a bleed? How to use a tourniquet? It's the simple skills that you may not think of. We met a gentleman a few months back, and he said, I'm new to the area, but he used to be, in the services. And he said, you live so far out of here. He said, how far away is your hospital? And I said, well, we can make it there in 20 minutes flat if you're going 90 miles an hour. And he said, okay, so do you realize that if you had a cut, if you had severed an artery or you had a major cut, you would bleed out before you hit the end of your road right here? And I was like, what? He said, do you know if you had a cardiac event, you have like 10 minutes to get to the hospital to get help? He said, you don't have that time here where you live. He said, what do you have to prepare? And I was like, he said, do you have a tourniquet on your homestead? And I was like, I don't have a tourniquet here. 3 days later, he Amazon primed me 2 tourniquets to my house. And he said, now watch some videos and figure out how to use these. He said, and if you have
Mhm.
a cardiac event, call me. I have one of those machines like at his house. But he said, and I'm 5 minutes away. And I said, okay, I got you. So his number's in my saved for emergency contacts list now. But it's one of those things that I'm like, oh my gosh, Eric, we need to know how to use a tourniquet.
right.
My kids need to know how to use a tourniquet. A year and a half ago, my husband completely nicked a vein. That was shooting 18 inches, he said. Thankfully, we took the shirt off of my 8-year-old's back, and my 13-year-old at the time fashioned a tourniquet, if you will, to stop the bleeding. And we were able to get him to the emergency room to get stitches that night. But it was one of those things that had we not had the skills to say, okay, pause, I need your shirt. I need to tighten this down and we need to figure out where we're going to go from here. We need to get this plan underway. So it's practicing those plans, working it out and making sure you have the resources. So Cayce, if you want to learn how to cook over an open flame, you better get some tools in place to cook over the open flame.
Yeah.
See, I am definitely down for that. And while we still have electricity and internet, I'm soaking up all of the YouTube videos that I can.
Yep.
But
Absolutely.
I'm also going over to Etsy and I'm getting the Hay Bale Prepper Guide, and I'm taking notes in the notes there.
Absolutely.
While you're talking about first aid, another thing that rings in my mind for being prepared in Skillset or skills to have is we had the Naked Gardeners on an episode last season. And one thing that Tori always says is if you don't know how to take the animal from beginning to end, you shouldn't have the animal.
Right.
Do you have the skills, if everything shut down, that you are able to process that said animal? We'll just use chickens because that's what I have. Okay. Do you know the skills to incubate? If you've never incubated before, we have a podcast on that. You should go and listen to it. I also want to, besides keeping it under hens, I want to learn other ways, grid down, of incubating eggs. I think that'd be an interesting topic to dive into. But for the eggs, and then you've gotten them to the size chickens that you have. Do you know how to take that chicken then and turn it into the meat that you put on your table? And it just sat in my mind after she said that. That is a skill that you have to know.
Yep.
And it's not like you can run to Kroger and get some chicken nuggets. Okay, if you want chicken nuggets, you need to know how to make those chicken nuggets. If you're in an emergency, or how to heat up the chicken that you can, whatever it is. But that was one of the other skills that I wanted to share that I just remembered her saying that. If you don't know how to take them from beginning to end, you shouldn't have that animal.
Yep, I agree.
And I think it's one thing, and you should watch YouTube videos and you should read and you should do that stuff. But like Monica has had classes where they actually show you how to butcher rabbits, chickens, different things that you have to practice those things too.
Yep.
It knowledge is not the same as doing, because you can watch the video and say, oh yeah, I could do that.
Yeah.
But some people can't do that. They need somebody to walk them through step by step, even though they've watched the video 15 times or 100 times. Find somebody that is, harvesting their chickens at some point. Ask them if you can help. They'll probably give you a few chickens for helping them.
Yeah.
I think hands-on is the best way to learn, right? I feel like as adults, we forget that, right? We send our kids to school. And I remember when I was in school, there was home ec class, right? Where we practiced cooking, where we made things in technology education class. I made a screwdriver one time. I was super excited because I pressed the plastic out. I made a screwdriver and I brought it home and I gave it to my dad like he was going to use it in everything. And it was only this big. But it was the point that we learned skills. And so we send our children to school and we say, you need to go and practice so you can become a functional adult. And they go and they write papers and they practice. And back in the day, I learned how to type in the typing class. I had an entire class. It was an entire semester of typing. I learned how to type. I got fast. I got good. But we expect our children to go and learn all these skills so they can grow up and become adults to what? Stop learning skills. I homeschool my kids because I want to always foster a desire to learn. Always seek to learn new skills. And I think, again, as a homesteader, you have an advantage. As a gardener, as a homesteader, as a farmer, you have an advantage over the people that only want to just go out and buy it and stock it.
Right.
Because you were in the process, you were in the mindset of always learning something new. And that is a huge skill. Open your mind up and always remember You can always learn something. Find those hands-on classes. You would not expect a kid to just know how to write a paragraph. They have to
Right.
go to school and learn. They have to physically write it out. They have to practice. I wouldn't expect my kids just to know how to read like that. They have to practice. They need the hands-on experience. They need to practice reading. The more you read, the more it gets easier. And it's the same with your skills. It's the more you practice with building a fire, starting a fire. Miss Ann has like a bajillion be readies on starting fires and how to keep your heat, how to start a fire, how to keep a fire, how to do all the things with it. Practice these skills. Practice cooking, practice fire starting, practice processing your animals. All the skills that it's super important to keep practicing because like Sandy said, you need the hands-on. You really do. Because you, there's so many times when I first learned to process our chickens, I watched Joel Salatin process a chicken. I watched him do it like 18 times. And I even put it on pause on my TV and ran outside and said, "Okay, Eric, I'm ready now." And I had the knife in my hand and I was like, "Hold on, wait, let me go back and double check this." And I ran back inside and I watched it again and I took a couple notes and I pushed pause and I ran back outside. And he was like, "Monica, I've watched it like a dozen times. We're fine." And I'm like, "I just want to make sure I'm doing it right." And so you can do all that now, but get your books, make your notes, practice, practice, practice. And whether it's skills to protect your house, maybe it's drills, maybe it's skills to know how to open that gun safe and grab your little thing out and do what you need to do so you can be ready to arm yourself if there was an intruder. Maybe it's the skills to harvest your medicinals, whatever it is, you got to get those skills.
Well, and we don't talk about this a lot, but skills of, and I know this kind of goes to Sandy's wheelhouse, is crocheting, knitting, sewing, that kind of stuff. Do you
Mhm.
have those type of skills? I, even as a man, thoroughly enjoy sewing. It is something that it puts me at peace, and I know that I could do on an electric sewing machine and by hand. I'm getting into the crochet knitting because I'm a little impatient when it comes to that. But I think that's the one thing that we don't talk about is you said home ec, which made me think about it. Is those type of skills? If you live in a colder environment, keeping yourself warm. Do you know how to knit a hat that would keep you warm,
Mhm.
or gloves or a sweater, or do you know how to sew a quilt or to make a blanket? All of those type of stuff that you think, oh, Casey, that's so Little House on the Prairie, but you never know. You never know when that skill is the skill that you may need for
I think
survival.
Sandy mentioned it before about patching your clothes too. I think you said it
Mhm.
way back when. Do you know how to patch up your clothes, right?
Yeah, because say you, you lose your job, your family has depended, it's a one income, or even if it's a two and one person loses it. Can you sustain your family? You're not going to be able to go buy clothes all the time. You're not going to be able to go to the movies. You're not going to be able to do all these different things that we're just so used to do, as Americans. Do you have skills to entertain yourself? Can your kids entertain themselves without videos and a phone? Sometimes you just got to practice those things. And all of a sudden it's like they realize, oh, I can do these other things. But unless you give your kids that chance to learn those things, um, if the situation was, bad, they're just so overwhelmed because they're just visually used to having everything on that phone or the computer.
Even for adults, though, it works the same way. I know when Eric has practiced his survival, my kids and my husband do a survival challenge yearly, and they always ask to do it a couple times a year. They have such a good time, but they have to give themselves 24 hours with whatever they can pack. They have to learn how to make a fire and they make their own shelter. And we've already done one video. The second video is coming soon. They actually camped out this time in the backwoods where my neighbor hears coyotes like literally nightly. So they were like hearing them. And the one kid, he dipped out in the middle of the night. Spoiler alert. He could not do it. And I told my 11-year-old, I'm like, next time you do this, you need earplugs, like for real earplugs, because
Mhm.
he's one of those people that hear all the noises. But for me, that reminded me, oh, well, if I ever go camping again, I'm going to need earplugs because I cannot, that's going to have to be in my bag, my emergency bag. I need earplugs because I cannot relax outside hearing all the noises. It,
Oh,
it gets in my head. I never would have thought about earplugs until my 11-year-old said, Mom, I hear all the noises. I said, earplugs, that's what you need. So he actually had little earplugs he left in that night. So he didn't hear any of the outside noises. He didn't hear the coyotes or whatever was out there creeping around and making noises. It was quiet. But my kids get really excited. They go outside ahead of time and they're practicing their fire skills. They're practicing their camping skills. They're practicing learning how to set up a tarp with sticks that they found. They get excited, but even adults do. Because my husband, I mean, he's real excited. He's like, coming up. Our survival thing is coming up. He gets so excited because he wants to know, where are the holes in my preparations? Where are the holes in my skill set that I need to work on for next time? And that's important. Where are the holes in your skill sets that you need to practice? Because if an emergency situation came up, how will you do? What
yeah.
skills do you need?
And that's a mindset that Eric and the kids have, that
Absolutely.
we need to be able to do that too. Everybody needs to be able to do that. That they have to change the way their perception is, and they're excited about that. Okay, it's made into a game. But that game could save your life.
It could.
Exactly.
And y'all, I'm telling you, I always enjoy episodes about skills and learning new skills. Again,
Mhm.
as we said, I think homesteaders, we have this thirst for knowledge. And the good thing is that you never stop learning. I mean, even as an adult, you can always learn something else from somebody else, which is always why it's so good to have a nice little community around you. We talk
Mhm.
about self sustainability, but it really is community sustainability. Because one thing that you may have taught somebody, they could teach you something in return. And then you can go over and you can get the prepper guide and you could write it down in your notes. But we
Yeah.
really appreciate you coming into this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure that you are leaving us comments. What are some of the skills that you are thinking about that you want to add to your skill set? Leave them down below. We would love to hear. But also come in tomorrow, Tuesday, for our Hey Yo Hey live radio show. We will be talking about this episode and talking about the skills that we may have learned. And you can see if I've actually learned how to cook over open flame. So put the best in now down below. But also make sure that you are subscribed because, again, this is a six-part series. This is going to be stuff full of information. You won't want to miss a single episode of it. And again, we thank you for coming in, and we will see y'all next week on the podcast. And we're going to be talking about, what are we talking about next week? Oh, we're talking about security and shelter. So
Mhm.
basically, all that Monica's boys and husband do in the wilderness, we're going to be talking about next week. So you won't want to miss
Yes.
it. So until then, we'll see y'all. Bye, y'all. Bye.